15 things you didn't know about Hugo Boss. Welcome to Alux.com, the place where future billionaires come to get inspired. Hello Aluxers, and welcome back to another amazing video. We love gorgeous luxury fashion brands, and one of the most renowned is Germany's Hugo Boss. Founded in 1924 by Hugo Boss, who trained as a weaver before he inherited his parents' lingerie shop. After serving in World War I, he founded the Hugo Boss factory and began creating his first line of shirts, jackets, coats, and workwear. Their revenue as of 2015 was more than $2.8 billion. Because Alux.com is dedicated to being the world's best resource on the most incredible luxury fashion brands, we had to cover one of the most successful and yet the most controversial. Here are 15 things you didn't know about Hugo Boss. Number 1. Let's get the most controversial out of the way first. Hugo Boss used to design uniforms for the Nazi government's SS. Hugo Boss's sales soared when he joined the Nazi Party, and he became the official uniform designer for the SS and Hitler Youth. After the war, he was tried for financially and politically supporting Hitler and stripped of his right to run a business or vote. His son-in-law took over the business, and it survived despite Germany's economic troubles in the late 1940s. If tyrannical leaders float your boat, check out our video, 10 Most Evil Villains in History Who Lived Like Kings, and find out what Hugo Boss's best friend got up to in his spare time. Number 2. The brand decided to be open and forthright in acknowledging its controversial political past. The brand sponsored research conducted by historian Elizabeth Tim, commissioning her to look into the brand's past and publish a study. They then contributed to a fund of $5 billion to compensate. Like many other German brands that were involved in World War II, they have chosen to be open rather than deny it. Number 3. Under new management in the 1950s, the brand made police and postal worker uniforms. After the death of Hugo Boss in 1948, the brand changed direction and returned to making uniforms for the German Postal Service and Police Service. They then started receiving their first orders for men's tailoring, moving the Boss brand towards suits. Number 4. At the very beginning of Hugo Boss's history, the brand made protective clothes for industrial workers. Hugo Boss has always created workwear of many different varieties, and their humble beginnings in deep recession, 1920s Germany were mainly focused on protective clothing for industrial workers. They also developed raincoats and uniforms, many prioritizing practicality in a country that was crippled by hyperinflation and unemployment. Number 5. Hugo Boss's grandsons took over the business after Hugo Boss's death and took it to new heights. Yu and Jochen Holy took the helm of Hugo Boss when they were just in their mid-20s, but they completely revolutionized it. They were the ones who decided to kick the brand into gear and start making menswear. They also had an eye for marketing and the youthful styles that young German men wanted to wear. Number 6. Before Hugo Boss, many German men's suits were made from stiff and heavy fabrics. Hugo Boss was growing in prosperity during the 1960s, so they introduced a brand new style of suit using lightweight, high-quality Italian fabrics. German men were used to stiff and heavy fabrics at the time, so it must have been a breath of fresh air to have access to a little bit of a suave Mediterranean tailoring. Number 7. Hugo Boss originally kept their Nazi involvement quiet, but it was revealed in an Austrian magazine in 1997. No doubt knowing it would be very bad for their public image, Hugo Boss kept their founder's political persuasion quiet for as long as possible. Austrian political magazine, Profil, dug up the remnants of a Swiss bank account which revealed how much business Hugo Boss got out of his involvement in the Nazi Party, and they immediately ran an exposé. Number 8. When Hugo Boss suits began to retail in the US, consumers were skeptical. No one in the US had really heard of Hugo Boss when they first started retailing in the US in 1976, so they faced an uphill battle from the start. Gradually, though, they became more well-known by using Sylvester Stallone and Wimbledon champion Bjorn Borg to develop their brand's image. Number 9. Forbes gave Hugo Boss a great review when the brand was trying to crack America. Forbes described the Hugo Boss look as representing the image of the successful professional with a hint of macho. This became a huge part of Hugo Boss's image in North America and Asia as it began to expand in new territories, allowing consumers to access some Germanic precision through their tailoring. Number 10. By 1986, Hugo Boss was worth more than every other German menswear manufacturer combined. The company went public in 1985, and a year later it was financially dominating the German menswear market. Another year later, they were grossing 500 million Deutschmarks each year, and reached the 1 billion milestone by 1989. Number 11. When the yuppie era of the 1980s came to an end, Hugo Boss had to change its approach. The flashy 1980s were perfect for Hugo Boss's masculine, expensive suits, but this all changed in the 1990s when this era of excess came to an end. They hired a new CEO in response, Peter Littmann, who put the company back where it belonged at the top of the market by launching 3 separate labels for 3 separate audiences: Hugo, Boss, and Baldessarini. Number 12. By 1991, Hugo Boss was Germany's largest menswear brand. The early 90s saw Hugo Boss become a leading light in German menswear, despite the fact that the Holy Brothers were retiring. Their leadership clearly showed longevity because they had secured their place in the high-fashion menswear industry. Number 13. The majority of manufacturing is done in Slovakia and Romania. The majority of sewing and tailoring is done in Eastern Europe, where costs are about 70 to 90% lower than mainland Germany. The more complex elements, however, such as the sleeves and collars, are stitched and attached separately in the original Metzingen factory in Germany. Number 14. By 1996, 60% of Hugo Boss sales were made outside of Germany. Littmann's new management brought Hugo Boss to a whole new Asian audience. Stores opened in Tokyo, Beijing, Hong Kong, and Shanghai, and sales skyrocketed in these regions. The majority of Hugo Boss sales came from outside of Europe for the first time ever. Number 15. Hugo Boss's CEO Littmann was used to working with carpets rather than suits. Littmann is a graduate of the University of Cologne, but had a history in textiles that was quite different to the Hugo Boss brand. He began his business life marketing carpets internationally, so it was a bit of a risk for the business when they brought him on board. Hugo Boss certainly has a checkered past, but its ability to turn itself around to a whole new audience is extremely admirable. Their style and aesthetic is clear: clean lines, smart tailoring, and Germanic poise. It's this that has made it such a recognized global brand. It knows exactly who its target customer is and exactly what they want from their tailoring. If you could have any Hugo Boss suit, what would you go for? The elegant wool blend slim fit, or their stunning double-breasted Glen check pattern suit? Oh, you're still here. Well, here's another interesting fact about Hugo Boss. Queen Letizia of Spain is a huge fan of the brand and regularly wears Hugo Boss to public appearances. She's one of few royals to recycle her outfits unashamedly and has been seen in the same Hugo Boss tailored jacket and skirt 4 times this year alone. Thank you for spending some time with us, Aluxer. Make sure to subscribe so you never miss a video. If you want more, we handpicked these videos you might enjoy, or head over to Alux.com for the best in fine living content on the planet. Be a part of the largest community of luxury enthusiasts in the world and tell your story.